Hey, good afternoon. My name is Ross Nova, running for governor of Minnesota under the Republican Party. Welcome to the War Room Kitchen, where we talk about real issues that matter to you. That being said, let's talk about the next one. I want to pass a Tax Clarity Fairness Act. Now, there's a lot of businesses that go through audits and they get hit hard if there's a small mistake or there's something that's like there was a misunderstanding and they have to pay thousands upon thousands of dollars, where some businesses are forced to shut down because of the high tax fee they had to pay back because it was very unclear in the first time. Even though it shows they did everything correct, at least they tried to do everything right, because taxes are very complicated. And so this kind of helps protect the small businesses, okay? The purpose of this act is to protect Minnesota businesses from unclear tax laws, retroactive enforcement, excessive audits, and punitive penalties that threaten businesses' survival. This act ensures transparency, education, advance notice, and good faith compliance. Key. So businesses can focus on serving customers, paying workers, and growing Minnesota's economy. Because if you are finding them $70,000, that could be a brand new piece of equipment that they could be investing back into the businesses that you took away. And I do not like that. Okay, the whole reinterpreting tax code during audits. Auditors shall not create, expand, reinterpret, or redefine tax obligations during an audit. Because sometimes those guys are having a hard time even understanding it themselves, so they make adjustments, which then it could take even longer for the audits to go through. If a tax code is unclear, vague, or inconsistently applied, the interpretation shall be resolved in the favor of the business. No penalties, fines, interest, or back taxes may be imposed based on interpretations that were not clearly written and publicly communicated prior to the audited period. Mandate state notice of tax code changes. Any clarifications, reinterpretations, or modification of tax codes must be formally issued by the state. The state shall notify all registered Minnesota businesses by email and written mail notice, clearly explaining what changed, who is affected, and what actions is required to comply. That is very clear. That is very important, because one business may get audited and realized, oh, you've been doing the taxes wrong because of the certain code, right? It was unclear. So they change it. When they change it, they have to notify all the businesses in a similar style of that business to notify them that, hey, this code was unclear. We made adjustments. That way, making sure that you guys are notified and make those adjustments as well. No new or revised tax code may take effect until January 1st of the second calendar year following passage. This delay allows businesses sufficient time to review changes, update the system, adjust pricing, and consult tax professionals, which is very, very reasonable. I try to be reasonable with a lot of stuff, right? To give time to make adjustments, because I understand sometimes things take time, you know. Any new or revised tax code shall apply only prospectively and shall never be enforced retroactively. Businesses may not be penalized for actions taken before the official effective date. Businesses with 20 employees or fewer may not be audited more than once within a 10-year period, unless it's clear written justifications is provided based on credible evidence such as fraud or criminal activity. And what I'm going to add to that is 10 years after the first audit is completed. There we go. And why is that important? 10 years after the first audit is completed, because sometimes audits can take a year, 2, 3 years. God knows why it would take that long. For example, COVID, it pushed things back a lot longer. I had a friend who went through an audit, right? And because of COVID, it took 4 or 5 years to get through the audit part, because the codes were not clear. They had to change laws, so forth and so forth, tax laws, tax codes. And by the time it was finished, 2, 3 years later, she went through another audit. And that is not fair to the business, to any business, really. So 10 years after the first audit is completed. Taxes assessed during an audit shall not accrue interest. Auditors may not impose fines or assessments that would reasonably risk closure of the business. So if there are any fines, the business has to pay. There is no interest. That's not the purpose of audits. The purpose of the audits is for the state to recoup the taxes that should have been paid out, not to add additional strain on the business. It's getting ridiculous with all these interests the government is charging people in anything. It's BS if you ask me, but anyway. If a business used a licensed CPA or tax professional and made a good faith effort to comply with the law, penalties shall be waived and fines reduced or eliminated. When I say reduced, I mean heavily reduced, maybe enough to pay for the guy who came to audit. That kind of reduction. Because they used a CPA who should have been certified. And are certified, it's just the codes are very, very complex tax codes. Auditors must provide written explanation for findings and cite specific statutes. Violations of this act may result in internal review and disciplinary action. So this is my favorite part of this. First time issued shall result in mandatory correction period of no less than 12 months with no fines. Penalties or interest imposed unless intentional fraud is proven. So in other words, the first time they get audited, there's no penalties unless they can prove that person, that business is specifically frauding the system. Okay? When business fails an audit, the state shall send an email-only educational notice to similar businesses explaining the general issue and require corrections without identifying the audited business. So, which is good. Other businesses must need to know. Businesses that make documented corrections within reasonable time after notice shall not be penalized in subsequent audits for the same issue. Any provision of this act is found invalid, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so the whole point of the Tax Clarity and Fairness Act for businesses is more to educate. Because like I said, I had a friend of mine who paid 70, 80K of fines, and the person had to settle because the business cannot keep dragging this, keep paying lawyers and all that stuff, and so I ended up settling. That's a whole new equipment right there that person could have bought, and that is not fair. And the thing is, when a person comes to do tax audit, it should be for educational purposes only. It's more for, hey, are you up on your books? Is everything the way it's supposed to be? Are you paying all the taxes properly? That's what an audit should be. In fact, businesses should be looking forward to an audit to make sure that they aren't, giving more taxes than they should, or if they are short, that they can cut a check and call it good, or at least make corrections so that won't happen again in the future. It should be an educational thing, not I'm going to take as much money as possible from every business that the tax audit is audit. Businesses should not be scared of tax audits. This Tax Fairness Act audit is more so, like I said, to educate, not to take as much money as possible. That's it. It's simple. Ross Nova, shooting forward, brighter, bolder, for better tomorrow. Thank you.